that it says Hayom Kotzana Hamalochem Aruba, right? It's a lot. It's a lot to discuss. The end of the Megillah, the pasuk before the final pasuk. So the pasuk says at one time, the first time that the entire Jewish world, or really the entire world, was made known of the events of Purim, the events that led to the establishment of Purim. It says, "Vayichtav Mordechai es hadvarim ha'ele," right? But in the final, the hadvarim ha'ele refers to he chronicled all that had happened, and he sent it out, to all the far reaches of the empire. But when it came to the Megillah, it says, "Vatichtov Esther Hamalka uMordechai HaYehudi es kol tokef." They wrote this tokef. Now, what does tokef mean? Tokef is strength, right? Tokef is strength. L'kayim esigeres hapurim hazos hashenis. Okay. So first thing, the tokef. Remember that in the Mishnah in Daf Yutes, the Mishnah says, "Meheichen kara adam es haMegillah v'yotzi yedei chavasa." How much of the Megillah do you have to read? One mandam says the entire Megillah. One says Mish Yehudi. One says from Acharat Dvarim Oile. One mandam says Balal Hu Noded Ashnas HaMelech. Right, like that. Okay. In any event, and it says Amar Rabbi Yochanan v'Kula Mikra Echad Darshu, that all of the different manda omrim derived their din from the same pasuk. Vatichta Esther Amalka of Mordechai Yehuda es kol tokef. One mandam says the tokef of Achashverosh, meaning you have to begin with the narrative of his mishta. The other mandam says the tokef of Mordechai, you have to read from Ish Yehudi, the tokef of Haman, and so on. The tokef of the Neis, Balaylahu. Right? But tokef means strength. It says L'kayim esigeres hapurim hazos hashenis, which the pshuta shel mikra means that this was an instruction that Purim should be observed in the future. Again, right? That it wasn't only a one-time observance, but it should be forever, for all times. So it's interesting, that there's a perush on the Megillah. One of the many perushim, but one of the most the most profound perushim in the Megillah is the Mechir Yayin from the Ramah, and the Ramah wrote. He says, "Umashakora lo bizman Achashverosh lios Purim shenis." What does it mean that hashenis? The Chazal, we learn from there also that if it's an Iber Yor, we observe Purim in the second Adar. But Rotzeloi melahoras al inyan sheni. He says that Hashenis is merames to the Pshuta Shel Mikra, the events as they occurred, and it also Hashenis is merames to the inyonim which were Sisrei Torah, right? Which were al pisod, which the Megillah is a levush of a musar and direction, and that's what Hashenis, that he says that Hashenis means the two ponim of the Megillah which is ben Niglen, the Megillah which is ben Nista. Okay? Alpi that idea, so it says that Vatichtav Esther Hamalka Mordechai Yehudi es kol tokef. So he says, it says that the Mavashemesh says very much from being Makatza, but the Mavashemesh explains that es kol tokef means that in the time of Mordechai and Esther, they made Mordechai and Esther instituted, and they were masakin that Purim should have a kedusha hayom, and it should have a kedusha like Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, and that the Yemei Purim should be mechaper. And that is why it's probably that idea which really inspired the Baal Nasana Torkif to begin his period on Nasana Torkif Kedushas Hayom. Because Vatichtav Mordechai Esther Amalka Mordechai Yehuda is called Torkif, is a Nasana Torkif Kedushas Hayom. Okay, that's the Torkif. And he enforces, this idea by saying that, by pointing out that the gematria of Torkef is the same gematria as Shofar, and it's the same gematria as So'ir, which the Shofar is the Avodah of Rosh Hashanah, and the Seirim are the Avodah of Yom Kippur. So Vatichtav Mordechai Esther Amalka Mordechai Yehuda is called Torkef. Okay. Also remember that in Daf Zayin, giving just a few, ideas what we'll be discussing, when it speaks about that Esther that the Megilas Esther was written Beruach HaKodesh, so the Tanoim have different, limudim from which they derive this, and in the end the Gemara says that Rav Yosef says, "V'mei Purim oila lo yavru mitoch haYehudim." You say, how do you know what's going to be in the future? So it must be that it was Nema Baruch HaKodesh. Rab Nachman bar Yitzchak Omer Mahocha v'zichram lo Yosef mezaram. Okay, and he says that we learn from the pasuk of v'zichram lo Yosef mezaram. The Tosha says, what's the difference between Rab Yosef? He says, "V'mei Purim oila lo yavru." What's the difference? Because it says could refer to only to that generation or to the Yidden that were in Persia or their children, those that were directly affected. But V'zichram lo Yosef Mizara means for all generations, for all times, forever. Okay, well, keep that in mind. Now we're going to go a little bit to what some of the things that I wanted to discuss. It'll be a little bit. Probably more on the halacha side than the agoda side, but we'll really be a little bit paseach al shtei asifim here. Right. So the Gemara brings a ma'aser. It says that Rebbe Lezer, the Amora, was made that Rebbe not an atiyah b'Purim. He saw that Rabbeinu HaKodesh planted a tree on Purim. And he bathed, he went into a merchatz, into a bathhouse on Shivasa B'Tammuz. So, and Verotzala Akka Tisha B'Av. Okay, so the Gemara brings a whole, there's an entire Shakla B'Taya here. And then the Gemara says that Rabbi Heicha Nota Netiyah B'Purim, V'atani Rabbi Yosef Simcha Mishta V'Yomtev. It says that the Yemei Purim are Simcha Mishta V'Yomtev. Simcha Melamed Shasurim Behesped. You can't be masped on Purim, Mishta Melamed Shasa Betanis, and Yontiv Melamed Shasa Basias Melocha. Okay, so that was the question, that how could Rabbi do Melocha on Purim when the word Yontiv indicates that there's an Issa Melocha on Purim? Right? That's what the question. So the Gemara has said. So the Gemara wants to first say, well, maybe it was Yud Dalet and Rebbe was in Tveria and they kept Purim on Tesvav, and the Gemara says no, that can't be, because if there's an Isra Malacha and Isra Hesed and Isra Tanis, it would be, although you read the Megillah only on one day, but Malacha Hesed Tanis would pertain to both days. Okay, as Yemei Purim Oila, Lasa Sam Yemei Mishta V'Simcha V'Yomtev. Okay. So in the end, the Gemara's maskona was that finally the Gemara said that Rabba Berei de Rava Oma. You remember, I always like to point out that the Maisa was witnessed by Rabbi Lozer. Rabbi Lozer was a Talmud Chaver of Rabbi Yochanan, right? He was a Talmud Chaver of Rabbi Yochanan, and the Amoraim throughout that was the first door of the Amoraim. The second door it could be, but it was very early in the Amoraim period, and it went, and this question of how Rabbi could do what he did was left unresolved for Doros, until they came to Rabbi de Rava, who was the generation before Ravina and Ravashi, which was right before the Chasimas HaTalmud. So it means that this issue of how Rebbe could play on Tisha on Purim was left unresolved for generations, hundreds. It would mean a span of hundreds of years. And then he came and he said, no. He said that certainly when Rebbe Lazar witnessed Rebbe planting the tree, it was b'yom ha'havit, it was on the day that he observed Purim. But Hesped v'tanis kibile alayu and Melacha lo kibile alayu. He said that there's a difference. He said that it says yes. Yeah, he said that the Isser of Hesped and Tanis, the Klal Yisrael was Makabel, but they weren't Makabel the Isser Malacha. Why did Mikorek sieve Simcha Mishta v'Yomtav? Because at first it says Lasa Sosam Yemei Mishta v'Simcha v'Yomtav, and in the end it says only Lasa Sosam Yemei Mishta v'Simcha. So V'lo Yomtav lo ksiv. So they were Makabel at the end Mishta v'Simcha, but not Yomtav. Okay, all right. What does that mean that they were Makabel Simcha or Mishta, but not Yomtav? So they weren't Makabel the Issa Malacha. Now what we're going to discuss, does that mean that they weren't Makabel Yomtav? Or does it mean only that they weren't Makabel the Issa Malacha? It's a big difference. Because remember, according to the Rov Rishonim, other than Rashi and maybe the Rashbam, Meleches Cholamoid are Midarabonin also. Midaraisa only the only of the Rishonim that we're certain that holds that Meleches Cholamoid is Daraisa is Rashi in Chagig and Daf Yud Ches. It's only Rashi. All of the other Rishonim, the Rif, the Rambam, all held that Meleches Cholamoid is Darabonin. Maybe the Rashbam as well. Maybe, but that's subject to to various interpretation. So it very well it can be that when it says that they weren't makabel yontiv, they weren't makabel, it means they weren't makabel the Issa Malacha. But yontiv it still is, like Cholamoid is yontiv. Right? Cholamoid, that's what the Rambam says right in Perek Tes. In the beginning of Perek Tes Milchas Yontiv, he says that the Yemei Cholamoid are Mikra Kodesh. And then he goes on to say that there's an Issa Malacha Midarabonin. But it's still Mikra Kodesh, and it's Yemei Korban B'Migdash. Right? Okay? So that's what the... So when it says that they weren't Mekabel Yontiv, it doesn't necessarily mean that they weren't Mekabel Yontiv. It means that they were not Mekabel the Melacha. Okay? I wrote things down that it should be easier, not for you and for me. Okay. Rabbi Skes pointed out to me that some of my Mara Mekoimus, I was off by a sieve. But I imagine who was interested would figure it out. Now, the Tosfos there in Daf Heyom at base. So there's an important Tosfos. The Tosfos brings a tshuva from Rashi. And in that tshuva, Rashi does not agree that the Gemara is more than an asmachta. That when it says Simcha Mishta V'Yontav, he says that hold on for a moment. He said that the Yemei Purim are really not more than Yemei Chol. He said they're Yemei Chol, not more. And when it says Simcha or Mishta, Hesped and Tanis, Rashi says that there's no real chiyuv of Simcha and Mishta as such, as on Yom Tovim v'Samachta v'Chagecha, right? And the person has to eat, he has to drink, whatever. He says that it only means two things: no tachna nor olam natseach. And Rashi more or less repeat. There's a Sefer HaPardes, and the Sefer HaPardes is the Tshuvas of Rashi. And in that Sefer HaPardes, it's more or less Rashi repeats the same that Tosfos, as Tosfos quotes his Tshuva here. Okay. Alpi that, so if we were to assume that, as Tosfos brings from Rashi, that the Iker Mishta v'Simcha is only that there's no Tachnun and that there's no Lam Natseach, First thing we have to know, in the time of the Nevi'im, in the time of Mordechai and Esther, which was really the Sof Nevuah, did they say Tachnun every day? And we know in the time of Rabbi Gamliel, the Gemara Bava Metzia, we know that they did say Tachnun. But did they say Tachnun already at that time? No, Mistame, yes. There was the Anshe Knesset HaGdolah. Mordechai was part of the Anshe Knesset HaGdolah. Probably at that time, the Tefillah as we know it today was probably more or less formulated, and probably there was a form of tachnun after Shemona Esrei. The tachnun doesn't necessarily mean a tachnun. The tachnun means that a person is mischanen meyushav. V'anachnu lo neida manaseh. That we're mispalo, we're mischanen me'umad, and then we're mischanen meyushav. Right? So that was probably from the time that there was an institutionalized nusach of tefillah. It was probably the Amidah was followed by yeshiva. That's probably what it meant. And Lam Natsayach, evidently, the inclusion of Lam Natsayach, Kapitel Chof, in the Tefillah was probably a very, very, very old takona. Remember that Uvola Tzion, that what we say the Kedusha de Sidra, that's already the Gemara on the end of Sotal Maya Olim Miskayim. Ayehesh Merabe de Pirka, Kedusha de Sidra, right? So all of this is very, 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 very old. Okay. So now, if we are to assume, as it appears from Rashi, that all that we have, the Sudas Purim, and even the Isra of fasting on Purim, which is very, very difficult, because remember the Gemara in Psachim that Marbar Avina Ha'yav Yosef Kula Shata Betanisa, that he would fast at Tanis Chalom any day except Erev Yom Kippur and except Shavuos and except Purim. Why? Because the Amar Rav Yosef Yemei Mishte V'Simcha Ksiv. Understand? But leave that for a moment. I hope that we'll be able to return to discuss that a bit. But the way that Rashi learns, that Tosfos understands Rashi, and it's confirmed a little bit from the Sefer HaPadis, results in the following din. That Omer al Anisim bebirkas Hamazon, right? Vim hischil sudasa beyom moshchab aralayla. You have to say al Anisim, right? When the Purim. And even if you eat in the daytime and the Sud extends into the night, which is Shushan Purim, or else in Yerushalayim it extends into the day following Shushan Purim, okay? You have to say al Anisim anyway, because we go bosa the Haschola always, right? Now, again, I don't, but the time is very, very, we don't have much of it. We have to budget it. But remember that I always point out when Rosh Chodesh is on Sunday. Remember that I always say, and I never say ten, I never say right baruch, I never said kablodati, but I always inform the olam at shalosh shudas that the Mogan Avram holds that you say either Ritzei shalosh shudas or Yala v'Yova. You can't say both. And he says that it's mistabit to say Ritzei because we go basa v'aschola, right? He has an eitzah to avoid the suffix, but the Taz in Kuf Pehei disagrees almost vehemently, and the Taz says that the din that you go basar haschala, and if you eat shalosh shudas and you end at 11 o'clock at night, you still say ritzei, is that you go basar haschala is a chiddush. He says kol shekain you go basar the hashta, but the chiddush is even basar haschala. So therefore, the Taz says that there's no Tata de Sasrei, and the Taz says that if Purim is Sunday, Rosh Chodesh is Sunday, then you would say both Yala v'Yova and Ritzei. And I always point out that's how I do personally, and I just okay. So here right away the Taz says when the Mechaber says you go Bosa Haschola, the Taz like raises a red flag and says hold on a moment. He says I have to qualify that and refer to what I wrote in Kuf Pei. Okay, fine. Now. What happens vim shochach al anisim? You forgot al anisim. Right? So what then? So machziranoso de lo sagi de lo ochel. He says that you have to repeat Birkas Hamazon because you must eat on Purim. Okay, and then you bring the shalo, the mashal, and the ripola, the gdola in achronim before him, and the Mogen Avram asks, he says, why should that be? He says it's clear that the Mechaber himself said in Tofresh Tzad Gimel, which I referred you to as well. The Mechaber is very, very clear that if you forget Al Anisim in Shmoneh Esrei, certainly you're not Choser. So why should Birkas Hamazon be more Chomer than the Tefillah? So the Mogen Avram comes with a Hachra, and the Hachra was accepted by most of the Achronim, and he says that if a person ate breakfast on Purim, and he said Alanisim, but then B'shas the Sudas Purim, he forgot, well, since he already ate one Suda, and you're Yotze with that Suda, even though we don't call it the Sudas Purim, but then you no longer have to, and the Machzah Shekel gives an example, for example, if a person eats 4 Sudas on Shabbos, right? He only required to eat 3, ate 4, so certainly, and he forgot Ritzei at the 4th Suda, certainly he doesn't have to repeat. Okay? But then the Mogen Avram ends, and he says, no, he said, that's what the Gedolei Achronim, his time, it was these were like deities to him. It was the Mashal, it was a Shaloah Kodesh, it was the Ripolak, right? Rabbi Polak, right? That's what it was. And he says, right? He says that they say that you have to be choizer. He qualifies it only one Suda. But he said, Anikala Atzmi, the Mogen Avram says no. He says that my day would be not to be choizer at all, because he said there's no chiyuv to eat pas, to eat a Suda on Purim. Now, what do you mean that there's no chiyuv to eat a Suda on Purim? He means, the way that the Achronim explain is that he means, although they don't relate it to that Rashi which is brought in Tosfos, but that's what he means, that the Divrei Kabbalah, the Divrei Nevi'im of Purim is only the Kriyas HaMegillah, and maybe Tanis you're not allowed, maybe not Lam Natzech, but the Sudas Purim that we have is an enactment of the Rabbanan that came at some later date, right? And therefore, where the Shaloah Kodesh says lo sagele de lo yochel, that he must eat, the Mogen Avram says sagele de lo yochel, because certainly there was no takonas neviim that you must eat. Okay, that's that. Okay.
So what is Mishnah?
What? So Mishnah he interprets only that you shouldn't fast, but you don't have to eat a Suda. You don't have to eat the Suda. Okay. So listen what. What?
You don't have to have bread.
You don't have to. But according to Rashi and the Mo, you don't even midivrei neviim. You don't even have to eat the Suda.
But Simcha is basar v'yayin.
Yeah, but Rashi and the Mogen Avram don't hold like that. For whatever they certainly don't hold like that. So listen what the
Mishnah, not Simcha.
No, even but ain't Simcha lebasar v'yayin is right.
Say Simcha.
Yeah, and Rov Rishonim are definitely going to disagree with this. But so in Tofresh Tzad Gimel in Tefillah, Omer al Anisim b'laylo v'yom. Okay. And he says definitely bim lomar and machzirun also. So here the Taz, this was the Taz in Tofresh Tzad Gimel that I referred you to, and the Taz brings the same Tosefta that he brings in Siman Kuf Pei Hey Le'inyan, in that long Taz that I was discussing with you before, whether or not when Purim is Sunday, if you or Rosh Chodesh is Sunday, whether you say both at Shalosh Shudas or not. And there are very many different. He brings it from the Mordechai, and there are many different girsos, and he tries to correct the girsos, and he comes out and he eliminates Chanukah, and he keeps Purim. In other words, to say that Purim you must that Alanisim is a chov, and Chanukah it's not. In other words, which means so. But listen to the lashon that he says here. Okay. Listen to the lashon that he brings from the Hashruli. How are you? He says, "Ochein." So he says, "I'm maskim that the Taz says that Avada in Tefillah you're not choizer." Although then the Mogen Avram said, well, "How can it be in Tefillah you're not choizer and Birkas Hamazon you are choizer?" Okay. So he says, "I'm maskim to that." Ochein. This is the lashon of the Mashal, the Amshel Shlomo. Ochein Sudas Purim. Shehetilu hanaviyim v'hachachamim al kol Yisrael liyosem yemei mishta v'simcha yoser mishaboses v'yomim tovim in kein logora mesuda Shabbos. Therefore, he says that Avada you have to be choser. He agrees with the Mogen Avram that you're only mechuyev to eat one Suda, and if you ate one Suda and you said Alanissim, and you ate the Sudas Purim and you didn't, then you already were Mekayim, so you don't. But he said that Avada, it's loisagele, that's the same tshuva of the Mashal that the Mogen Avram brought and disagreed with. This is loisagele de la'ochel. Okay? Anyway, Rabbi said, there's drinks, please. Help yourselves. Anyway, one very, very briefly, the Mogen Avram din is based. First thing, the Mogen Avram obviously holds like the Rashi that Tosfos brings, interprets differently than Mishnah V'Simcha, okay, which we hope we'll come to. But the Mogen Avram had a very, very strong hochacha, because the Mogen Avram in Tofresh Tzadik Vav said, how can it be that in Tefillah lekula alma you're not chozer, and because Hamosna you should be chozer, right? How can it be? However, there's a difference. There is a difference, and the Taz and I didn't see it in the Achronim, but I'm certain that this is accurate. There's a difference. Why are we chozer? Why are we chozer for Yalla v'Yova and Rosh Chodesh? At night we're not chozer because it's ein kiddush hachodesh balayla, right? Why are we chozer for Yontiv, Rosh Chodesh, Shabbos? You know, why, in davening, the reason, because the tefillas are keneged timidim tiknum. Remember that one mandama says tefillas ovas tiknum, and one mandama says tefillas keneged timidim tiknum. No, and I'm sure that you've heard this from me before over the years. You've been here so long, you must have heard it from me. That the Rambam, that the Rambam in Hilchas Tefillah, in Hilchas Brachas, the Rambam holds that the tefillas are keneged timidim tiknum. He says it befedish. He says that they were masakin mincha, shachas and mincha, and musaf keneged the karbonas. In Hilchas Melachim, by the Sheva Mitzvahs, he says that the tefillos were ovas tiknum. Okay, and it happens to be that if you look, I found it many years later that the Rashash and Brachas points this out and has a very very plausible explanation that the Iker is Avada, what the Rambam says in Hilchas Brachas, that connected Tamidim, that correspond to the Tamidim. So what does it mean? The function of the Tefillah on a Shabbos or a Yontiv, in addition to being the Bakosha, you see that Shabbos, we omitted the middle brachas, even though they really may have been appropriate, but we do omit the middle brachas, because the Iker of the Tefillah is keneged the Karbonas. Even Shachris, you're going to ask that Shachris isn't really, Shachris was the same Tomid as every day, but this goes into already the Sugyas in Zvachim and Menachas, that the Tomid on a day that there was a Musaf is a different Tomid. So they're different Talmud, okay? So Memela, if you omit on a Yontif, you omit Yalla v'Yavo, Shabbos you omit Ritzei, your Tefillah is no Tefillah. It's not the pshat that you're chozer because you didn't say Ritzei. Your Tefillah isn't a Tefillah, because Tefillah is keneged Tmidim Tiknum, Tmidim in Musafim, right? So what the whole Tefillah falls away, it's nothing, right? Because it's not the Iker of the Tefillah. Shabbos and Yom Tov, you don't even say Bakoshes. Whether that's the Iker Adin that you omit the middle brachas, or that was only a later takona, but nevertheless, certainly they're not Ma'akev, because if they would be Ma'akev, then even later Chachamim couldn't have eliminated, like Tosfos says in brachas. So the Tefillah, the Mahus of the Tefillah is, during the week, there are two components to the Tefillah. There's the Tefillah of Bakosha, Le'oilem Yesado Adam Shivcha Shel Mokem V'acha Kach Yispalel, and then there's the Korban. Shabbos and Yom Tov, there's only the Shavach and the Korban. So Memela, if you omit, you don't even say that. Or you omit Yalla v'Yava. The Tefillah is no Tefillah. You understand? Because you've missed the Neshalma Purim Svaseinu, right? Purim, Avada is no less than Shabbos or Yom Tov in that regard. But the Tefillah does not correspond to Karbonas. Understand? It doesn't correspond to the Karbonas. There's no Neshalma Purim Svaseinu. Memela, there's no reason to be chayzer. So that which the Mogen Avram wanted to bring a kal v'chomer from the tefillah to the Birkas Hamazon, certainly the Taz and the Rov Rishonim, and the Achorim, the Marshal, the Shaloach Kodesh, the Ripolak Avada, they don't hold like that because they hold ein aniden doimel araya. Okay, certainly that was okay. That was just there. That's not on the paper actually. Okay. So the Taz, okay. So let me learn with you a little bit here with very, very, all of this, and I came to the conclusion that all of this really has to be determined. The way that we determine this is really by knowing what the status of Avelis is on Purim. Because knowing what the status of Avelis is on Purim will determine whether or not the din of Yontiv of Purim, when it says that they were Makabel Hesped and Tanis, but they weren't Makabel Melocha, right? Whether it means they weren't Makabel Yontiv Bechlal, it wasn't a Yontiv Bechlal, or does it mean they were Makabel Yontiv, it's like Cholamoid, but there's no Isser Melocha. Okay. Last year, if you remember, also we spoke about this, and we spoke about it a little bit from a different perspective, and we spoke about the Raavad and the Tmim Deim, where the Raavad speaks about the Raavad asked whether you should put on tefillin on Cholamoid. It went so far as a salkedatech not even to put on tefillin Cholamoid, and the Raavad said Purim yes, Cholamoid no. And we talked about that may be one of the reasons that they didn't want to be makabel the full yonta, because then you wouldn't be able to put on tefillin, and Yehuda also out of a simcha v'sasa vikar is tefillin. But now more in the halacha sense, in the sense of the din, the Machaber says in Tofresh Sadik Vov, right, he says Kol divrei avelis nohagim b'Chanukah Purim. That all divrei avelis. In other words, we're talking here, when we talk about avelis, we speak avelis shiva. And this is the Rif in the Rambam, that divrei avelis are knowing, and that means that the oval has to sit low. He's also benilas sandal. Whatever the requirements are during the shiva will pertain on Purim. Okay. Hago, so the Ramos says, umikol mokom yelech lebeis hakneses, lishmoa Megilah. No, he has to go to the shul to hear the Megillah, because an ovel is chayav b'chol mitzvahs amuras b'Torah. Right? He doesn't go out of his house to avoid being socializing, but he has to leave the house. He goes out of the house for the Megillah. Right? V'im yochel ha'asov minyan lebeis likras Megillah odif tvei. If he can bring a minyan to the house, it's better, right? V'yesh omrim she'ein aveles noig bepurim lo b'yudalad v'lo b'tesvav. Then the Ramos says no, but that there are others, which is the Rosh, and he says that they hold that Avelis isn't noeg at all. Avelis Shiva isn't noeg. V'chein noagim v'afile Avelis Yom Rishon nidchem mipnei Purim. Avodvam shebetzina noeg. And then the Ramos goes on to say that according to these Rishonim, which is primarily the Rosh, the Tur, the Rama Rottenberg, that Avelis is not noeg. Then Purim has the status of Shabbos, that it's mafsik the Avelis, but it's not, but it's oile as one of the days of the Shiva. Okay? Fine. It's interesting to point out here that the Ramo says that when he's still speaking according to the Rif and the Rambam, that Avelis is noeg on Purim, so he says that the Ovel can leave his house. Right? He can leave his house. If he can bring a minyan, better, but okay. So first thing, the Mogen Avram here, who holds essentially like the first day, holds like the Machaber, that Avelis is noeg on Purim, right? But he says that in the daytime Purim, certainly he can go to shul. So it's interesting that there's a parallel to this in Tov Kuf Pei Gimel, by the dinim of the Slichas. So the Ramos says that an Ovel Torch Shiva should not leave his house to go to Slichas, other than Erev Rosh Hashanah Shemabim Beslichas. Erev Rosh Hashanah, where they're Mabim Beslichas, the Ovel can go out of his house. And the Magen Avram says that in those mekomis with their marbe slichas and erev Yom Kippur, he can also go, right? Okay. No, there's no question that Avelis is noeg. It's erev Rosh Hashanah. Certainly Avelis is noeg. There's no hava mina to think differently. That din that the oval can go out of his house to shul for the slichas is more of a din of hefsid. It's a hefsid meruba. Then, because if he would miss the slichas, it's a hefsid meruba. No, an oval is his alavelis can be relaxed with as a hefsid meruba. He can even go to work if need be. Understand? It's not midin. That's not a question if the avelis is yes. So certainly the Mechaber and the Magen Avram, even if they hold that the avelis is noig Purim, the Rif and the Rambam, certainly he can go to the Megillah, right? He can certainly go to the Megillah. It's a hefsid, he's mechuyev to hear the Megillah. Right. Here, you have, I told you that the Magen Avram holds like the Mechaber, that Avelis is noig, and the Taz definitely holds not. Okay, he says not. But listen what the Taz says. They be medayek a little bit in the Lashon of the Rambo. He says that although Avelis is noeg and he shouldn't leave his house, but he can go to the Megillah. If he can bring a minion, it's better, but he can go to the Megillah. And then immediately after the Yesh Omrim Shein Avelis noeg bepurim lo b'yudalad v'lo b'tesvav. Then of course, which is the way that we're noeg, and the Ramah points out that the Mechaber himself in Yoradei and Tov Aleph also holds that Avelis isn't noeg. In the Levush, it's very interesting. The Levush here tries to be metaretz what that the Mechaber really doesn't mean here, that Avelis is noeg. But okay, Zok the Taz that the last thing that the Ramah said, according to the Mechaber in Avelis, was that although Avelis is noeg, but he can leave his home to hear the Megillah. Okay. However, the medayik that he leaves the home for the Megillah, he davens ma'ariv at home, and then he comes to the shul for the Megillah. So zok the Taz that I would want my inclination would be to interpret that when the Ramah says and Yeshomim that there is no Avelis on Purim, then that would mean to say that he can even go for ma'ariv. In other words, that even if the Avelis is noeg, he can certainly go for the Megillah, right? Avram, do me a favor. You know where I keep the tour? Bring the tour, the Orach Chaim base, please. Okay, okay. That even if Avelis is noeg on Purim, but he can still leave the house to go to the Megillah, but he cannot go to Ma'ariv. He davens Ma'ariv at home, right? And then he goes to shul to hear the Megillah. Fine. So the Taz says that I would imagine that the Ramah was saying that if you hold that Avelis is not noeg on Purim, he can even go to Ma'ariv, right? Because even if Avelis is noeg, he can go to the Megillah, only not to Ma'ariv. So certainly, thank you. So certainly, then if Avelis is not noeg, he can go also to Daven, right? But the Taz says that if you look in the Lashon of I wrote it down here, but it's so small I can't see it. That if you look in the Lashon of the Ram Rottenberg, who is really this day, you'll see that that's not the case. Okay. Okay, listen, there's just a few lines here. After Ma'ariv in the Beis HaOvel, Beleil Purim, Be'erev, he says, look, he says, V'achar shehispalalu beBeis HaOvel, Beleil Purim, Be'erev, and then they davened Ma'ariv, then the Ram Rottenberg paskin to the Ovel, Sheyelech, Lebeis HaKnesses be'eis Kriyas HaMegillah. He should go to shul at the time of Kriyas HaMegillah. Da'afilo avoida shekab tzibur shedorche Shabbos Kriyas HaMegillah da'orecha. So kol shka avelis derabonan. Certainly the avelis derabonan, the Megillah is doicha the avelis derabonan. Okay. The chayv l'shlach monas. Okay. So this is the Rambam Rottenberg that on which the Rosh and the Tur were soimach to say that Avelis is not Noig on Purim, and the Rambam Rottenberg then said, well, what does he do with the Megillah? What does he do with the Megillah? Okay, he davens Ma'ariv at home, and then he goes to hear the Megillah. Okay, so therefore the Tal says that although the last thing that the Ramah says, according to the Mechaber, is that he should hear the Megillah in Shul, meaning that he davens at home, and then he says, yes, Shimon, that Avelis isn't Noig on Purim, and I would understand that to mean he can go to Shul for Ma'ariv as well. That's not what the Rambam Rottenberg meant, and you have to understand that. Okay, so just to back up for a moment, the Tur brings the Shiltus, the Shiltus der Rabachoi, who was, of course, much earlier. And the Shiltus der Rabachoi Gorn says very, very, Kosta b'Shiltus shemeis lameis bePurim. If a person lost someone, Rachmana litzlan, on Purim, also laspida lino gavelas v'meis koydem Purim upoga Purim betoch Lamed. And what if the Purim came during Lamed, right? Like a Shabbos says that bottle memen exeres ayin. So the Shiltus holds that Purim is like a regel, and the Beis Yosef says because it says Yemei Mishta v'Simcha, and he brings it v'Samachta b'Chagecha, like you said before Moshe, and Memele he holds. So on this the Beis Yosef asks, if that's the case, if he was Noeg Shiva and Purim comes during the Shloshim, why doesn't the Shiltus hold that it's Doicha Shloshim? So some said the Shiltus holds that it is Doicha Shloshim, but they don't. And then the Tur brings the Rambam Rottenberg, and the Rambam Rottenberg says that in any case Avelis isn't Noeg, but not as far as extreme as the Shiltus to say that it's Doicha the Shiva. It's only like Shabbos. The Dvarim Shebetzina is Noeg, and it's Mafsik the Avelis, but it's Oilet for the Shiva. Okay, that's what he says. Now listen, just hear what sorry. Listen to the Loshen of the Rambam Rottenberg. This is the tshuva of the Rambam, which the Tur doesn't bring in its entirety. The Beis Yosef does. V'la'achar shehispalalu bebeis ha'ovel beleil Purim be'erev. They davened beleil Purim be'erev. They davened Ma'ariv, and the Ramah. Remember that the Ramah said that the din is that you say Al Anisim even though you have not yet read the Megillah, just like you say Al Anisim even before you sit Chanukah. So la'achar shispalalu bebeis ha'ovel beleil Purim be'erev. Heute lo the Rambam Rottenberg paskin to the Ovel sheyelech lebeis hakneses beis kriyas haMegillah. Okay, why? Because the Purim is Dor Chaveles. Okay, that's so the Tur brings the tshuva, but he doesn't bring the loshon of the tshuva, which the Beis Yosef does. So now, listen for a moment. You know that just I don't even. It's not even a diuk to understand what he says. You know what the words are here. La'achar shispalalu bebeis ha'ovel beleil Purim ba'erev. What is the Leil Purim and what is the Erev? Now, we know shispalalu, the davened Ma'ariv. That's all. Davened Ma'ariv, you davened Ma'ariv, go to the Megillah. What is shispalalu bebeis ha'ovel beleil Purim ba'erev? Hora lo sheyelech lebeis hakneses be'eis kriyas haMegillah. He told him to go, he didn't tell him to go to hear the Megillah, but le'eis kriyas Megillah, right? He says here, they davened beleil Purim be'erev. They davened, and he should go to the Beis HaKnesses b'shas kriyas haMegillah. So what then? You daven Ma'ariv and go to the Megillah, right? So, and I even have it. One day, if someone will be interested, from Tovshinayin Gimel, okay. Tovshinayin Gimel, that I was medayek here in the Loshen, that Avad, the Rambam Rottenberg holds that there is no Avelis on Purim. And the Rambam Rottenberg was talking al Pi'ar Minig, which is al Pitosus and Brochas in Daf Chav Zayin on the base, the Divrei Maskil Yaakov Tikkun, that the Minig was not only for convenience, but the Minig was to daven Ma'ariv early. Okay? Not only as a matter of convenience as we do. Understand, Beth Yehuda, not as we do. It wasn't convenience, but they held because they were medayek that this was Yaakov Tikkun, and Yaakov was Tikkun when there was still sun, just as, and I have it also, just as the shita of the Ravid, that Ar Labasa Boikin Asachomitz La Ar Haner, and that the Ar Haner means Ben Ashmoshes. Okay? And the Mogen Avram is Teufels like the Ravid, and all the other, Achronim disagree, and they hold like the Balamor, and the other Rishonim, that it's Dafke from Tzesek Echavim. Medayek that what the Rama Rottenberg is talking about, that at that time they davened Marav Mibod Yom. And they davened Bebeis Ha'ovel, they davened Mibod Yom. And then at night, because the Megillah Lechatchile is from Tzesek Echavim is this man, don't then go to Shul Avada. Okay? But if it were a question where Marav was davened only after Tzesek Echavim, then Avada, the Ovel, would go to Shul for Marav also, because the Yom of Purim was already Chal, Purim was Doicha Avelis, and there's no reason that he shouldn't go to Shul. Why shouldn't he go to Shul? Here, that he would daven Beleil Purim Be'erev, right? Erev means earlier, as it was, and he doesn't even have to specify, because that was the prevalent practice at that time, Alpit Toisvis in Daf Chav Zayin, right? Then he goes to Shul when B'shas Kriyas HaMegillah, which is Tzesek Echavim. But if the davening was also when B'shas Tzesek Echavim, and then Las Dimba Las Dayan, the Ovel has to go to Shul like anyone else, because they're like Shabbos, it's Doicha. Like the Taz also talks about that, that the Shamish on Erev Shabbos was Koreh after L'choranana. At that time, in his time, they didn't say L'choranana, everyone, they were Koreh L'beh, the Shamish would say, and we say Hamokim, the Ashkenazim, they say Hamokim Yinach Eschem. But Avada B'Tzesek Echavim, Avada has to go. Very good. So that was Tov Shinai and Gimel. You'll see anyone ever has an interest to look, you'll see it says about the Sudas Purim, Tov Shinai and Gimel. But in Tov Shinai and Zayin, I made another comment that I found, that there's the Eliyah Rabbah. There's the Eliyah Rabbah, and the Eliyah Rabbah has a Perush on the Levush, the Eliyah Zota. First he wrote the Eliyah Zota, and Alpi that, he wrote the Eliyah Rabbah as a commentary on the Taz and some of the Mogen Avram. And the Eliyah Zota says beferish what I'm saying in the Rama Rottenberg, almost mila b'mila. That he says b'medra. That what does he say? He says that be'erev, b'leil purim be'erev. It means you daven marav mibod yom. So the oval there, he did that. That's what the Taz means to say. That the Taz, although Hayos that Avelis isn't noeg on Purim, Avada, and it's like any other Shabbos, not as far as the Shilta says, but that the Avelis isn't noeg. But nevertheless, just as the Oval, Alpidin really should daven in our tradition, he davens mincha at home, Erev Shabbos, and then goes, when it gets dark, to Shul. It's the same thing with the Megillah, that B'shas, Kriyas HaMegillah, he goes to Shul. But where Ma'ariv is daven Bizman, at Tzesek Echavim, les dimba les dayan. Right? That Avada, without question, he would have to go to Shul. Okay? So just put this up. Thank you. Okay. Let's see where I'm up to, if you don't mind. Okay. Oh, yeah. Can I buy the one thing? You know where I keep the Pnei Yeshua? It's in blue tape. It's blue tape. Do bring a Chelak Aleph. I'm sorry. Oh, so in any event, we go back like this. That the Mogen Avram le'inyan alanissim showed that definitely that he holds like Rashi, that al kol ponim, that when it says that simcha mishta kabila layu and yontev that yisam alocha lo kibila layu, he means to say that they weren't makabel yontev. And that the observance of Purim that we have now, the simcha that we observe on Purim, the way that we observe it, that's a darabonan that came much later. Okay? And the Avada the Taz, who holds like the Thanks, sir. Thank you. And Avada, the Taz, who holds five Megilas in Daf Hey, and the Taz, Avada, who says that you may Purim sheichmiru Hanevim v'chachamim yoyse you may mishta v'simcha yoyse meshaboses v'yomim tovim. Avada, he wasn't makabel like this, like that tshuva of Rashi. Okay, certainly wasn't makabel that tshuva of Rashi, and he holds that the ikar takonas hanavim was that Purim should be yemei mishta, it should be yemei simcha, and thank you, it should be yemei mishta and it should be yemei simcha, right? And the dinim of Purim that we have with the Sudas Purim, the Alanitzim, and everything that is the actual the takonas hanavim. Right? So listen, what again? So I found. Later on, I found that remember that there's a question in Tosfos and Daf Hey. Tosfos speaks about whether Shechionu is repeated in the daytime, because you say Shechionu at night, right? And so Tosfos doesn't understand why would you repeat Shechionu again? Chanukah you don't say it twice. Sukkot you don't say it twice, not on the Sukkah, not on the Abba Minim. So why would you say Shechionu again? And the emes is that the Rif and the Rambam and the Rov Rishonim say that you don't say Shechionu again. The Beis Yosef holds also that you don't say Shechionu again. However, Rabbeinu Tam says no, you can't eliminate Shechionu in the daytime because the Iker Pesumei Nisa, the Iker Kriyas HaMegillah is in the daytime. So why do you say Shechionu at night? He doesn't say. But he says Al Koponim, he doesn't argue that you say Shechionu at night, that certainly. But he says that you cannot eliminate the Shechionu in the daytime because the Iker Kriyas HaMegillah and the Pesumei Nisa is in the daytime. Okay. So, where you see that I wanted to be toiler, all of this in the Avelis, that all of this is that if you say that the Iker Takonas Hanavim was, that the Takon of Mordechai and Esther, that Sholchala Esther L'Chachamim Kivuna L'Doros, that implied and that encompassed the observance of Purim as we have it, with the Adelo Yoda, with the Suda, with everything, then Avada, that's the das of the Shiltas and the Rami Rottenberg, that they hold that Avada Purim, if me'ezet tam, it's not doicha, it's not mevatel, the Gzera Shiva and Shloshim as the Shilta says, but at least it's like Shabbos. Okay, and it's very, very plausible to say that everyone would have agreed with the Shiltas had they been Mekabel the Yisum Alocha. And remember the way that the Ravad says in the Timim Deim, had they been Miyuad Sheva Brachas last year, the night of the Shia. Had they been Mekabel the Yisum Alocha as well, they wouldn't have been Tfilin either. Understand? They wouldn't have been Tfilin either. Okay. So Hova Hotalia. If you hold that Avelis is noig on Purim, like the way the Rashi says, then Avada, then the Purim, the stature of Purim as a takona of a mitzvah's neviim is very reduced. But if you hold, that's the Rif and the Rambam. But if you hold like the Rami Rottenberg, Avada Ver at the Shiltas, and the Rami Rottenberg, and the Rosh, and the Tur, that Avelis Shiva is not noig, and the Mechaber himself holds that way in Siman Tov Aleph in Yoredeya, then Avada, then every aspect of Purim, down to the issue of Chazorah for Alanisim by the Suda, is completely different. It's a parallel Shabbos and Yom Tov, right? So listen here what and I underlined it. What the Pnei Yeshua says. He says that Rabbeinu Tam said that you must say Shechionu. Whatever the reason that you say Shechionu at night, he doesn't know, but he said, Al Purim, you must say it in the daytime, because this is the Iker Pesumei Nisa. This is the Iker Mitzvah. Yemei Mishta V'Simcha. Lefi shehu Iker Chiyuv L'chol Adam. The Kriyas HaMegillah in the daytime is the Chiyuv of everyone. This is the Chiyuv of Vayomim Oel Niskorim V'Nasim. Mashen Kin Belayla Eina Ela Mitzvah Ba'alma. The night of Purim is only mitzvah ba'alma. What does it mean? It means that it wasn't the takona of Mordechai and Esther. It was a takona that came about some point much later, in the time of Yeshua ben Levi, the Chayav Adam Likras is Megillah Belayla V'Lashnoisa Bayom. But until that time, there was no per se obligation to hear the Megillah at night. The Ikka Megillah was in the daytime. And remember, if I might digress for a moment, remember that although this wasn't really in the syntax, what do you call it, the lesson plan, you remember that the Kfarim are Makdim Liyom HaKnisa, and they come and they come to the town, to the larger town on the market day, and someone, although it may be Yud Aleph, Yud Beis, Yud Gimel, someone from the town reads the Megillah for them. Frag the Ran says, what do they do with the Megillah Shalayla? So the Ran has two terms. One time he says they read it as best they can at home. They really don't read it correctly. Probably they don't even have a Megillah. Or else he says that they don't read the Megillah Shalayla at all because the Megillah Shalayla at all isn't the Ikeh. Okay? That's what the Ran says. So but he says, but he doesn't quote Masha Einkin Balayla Ena Ela Mitzvah Balma. It's a mitzvah darabonan as opposed to the kriya of the daytime. We call it a daraisa because it's divrei Kabbalah, right? The nighttime is darabonan, the daytime is divrei Kabbalah daraisa. But nevertheless, every mitzvah that we said memeloi sosur, right? Right? What was the other man? One man that says lo sosur shalovicha v'yagedcha. So the Pnei Yeshua says, but the whole inyan of the Zman of the Shechianu is misunderstood. He said that which there's a mevorcha among the poskim, and they don't understand that why would you say, if you must say Shechianu in the daytime, why would you have to say it in the evening? Wait until the daytime. Why would you say it twice? Why? You could say it, but why would you have to? So Zokta Nirali Dishatzarech Levarach Balayla Lav Mishum Kriyas Hamegillah. The chiyuv to say Shechianu at night is not for on the Megillah itself. You're not saying it for the mitzvah of the Megillah. Ela Mishum Chovas Hayom. But you're saying the Shechianu at night because of the Yom Tov of Purim. Like Kaven, the Asa'u Chachamim K'mo Regel Mamish. The Chachamim considered Purim a regel mamish d'chsiv Yemei Mishta the Simcha, and the Beis Yosef adds from the Rama Rottenberg the Samachta bechagir d'chsiv the Samachta bechagecha v'divrei Kabbalah k'divrei Torah, right? Ad sheleshitas kama poskim ein avelos v'aninas noeg bo kamo b'shar regel. You see, this is exactly what we're saying, isn't it? Is that to the degree, to the extent, right? Isn't that what I'm saying? That to the extent that Avelis and even Aninas, even Avelis Yom Rishon, which is a deraisa, isn't noig according to the Shiltas and the Rama Rottenberg and the Rosh and the Tur and the Rov Rishonim, the Taz, go to the Achronim, right? In Kein Shape yesh levorach zman kemoy zman deregel v'lemocha b'yom evorchen zman al mitzvahs kriyas HaMegillah. The Pnei Yeshua says very good. He says at night you say Shechianu because it's Yom Tov, right? Like exactly like Yom Kippur, even though there's no cause. Exactly, very good zugestellt. Just like Yom Kippur, Yom Kippurim, right?
So why there's no Seudah on the night?
Because it says Yemei Mishteh v'Simcha. Yemei Mishteh v'Simcha.
So twice. It has to be Friday.
No. Oh, because Shabbos, even a Shabbos, if it hadn't said 3 times. Even then there wouldn't be more than 1 or 2 sudas. But by Purim there's no ribui like that, right? So memela 1 suda is enough. But 1 suda you have adam mechuyev to eat, and you're not allowed to fast, right? So the Shechianu at night is because of the Yom Tov. The Yom Tov of Purim is gorem the need to say Shechianu. Right, whereas the Shechianu in the daytime is then you repeat the Shechianu not for the Yom Tov, but rather for the mitzvah of Mikra Megillah.
Like the Yeshua, if you didn't lay in the Megillah, you'd make Shechianu.
Yeah, right, certainly. They were masmichit on this, but exactly, it's a very, very, very important Torah. So So what I wrote here, that it makes a lot of sense, because the Rambam holds that all divrei avelos are noeg and Chanakim Purim. It means the avelos shiva. The Rif in the Rambam, all the avelos is noeg, right? The regular avelos is noeg and Chanakim Purim. And the Rif and the Rambam hold not to make shechionu in the daytime, because they hold that there's no shechionu on the Yom of Purim, because they don't hold that it was that it's equivalent of Shabbos and Yom Tov. The only shechionu is on the Megillah. You made the shechionu at night, there's no need to repeat it. You're not allowed to repeat it. But the Rabbeinu Tam, the Shilta Savada, and the Ram Rottenberg, and the Rosh, and the Tur, and the and the Rov Rishonim that hold that Avelis is not noeg on Purim, they hold the way that the Pnei Yeshua explains it, that it's because Purim is a yontiv, the Kedushas Hayom is mevatel the Avelis, like Shabbos. Memela, it requires a shechionu. If Shabbos didn't come every 7 days, it would need shechionu as well. There's no Sisrei Torah. The reason that why don't we make shechionu on Shabbos, because it's every 7 days. If not for that, we would say shechionu on Shabbos as well. Right? Okay. So I found a very important smach to this. In the Yerushalmi, in the second parak, right before Mishnah Hay, so the Yerushalmi brings. It's talking on this din of how much of the Megillah do you have to read, right? So the Gemara, the Yerushalmi brings Reb Leizer b'shem Reb Chanina Rogel. Reb Leizer brings, and the Reb Leizer means Reb Leizer ben Pedos, who was the Stam, he was the Stam Amor in Shas, is Reb Leizer, and he was the Mora, the Talmud Yerushalmi. So it says in the name of Reb Chanina Rogel, Sarach lekloisa b'layla v'lashanoisa b'yom. You have to read the Megillah. We have it now, Gemara, in the name of Yeshua ben Levi. And the Yerushalmi says it in the name of Reb Chanina Rogel. Fine. You have to read it at night, repeat it in the daytime. Very good. So, it's almost the Korban Noeda is almost, we think alike. What would be, those who come to my Shiurim, what would be the first question that I would ask would be, who is Reb Chanina Rogel? Did anyone ever hear of him? That's a good question. So, the Korban Noeda, Reb Chanina Rogel, Kachshmo, this is his name. Reb Chanina Rogel. That was his name, Rogel, right? Okay? That could be, right? So, he doesn't like that. He says that Reb Chanina Rogel says that Tzarech lekrosa b'layla v'shnosa b'yom. He says that his name was Reb Chanina. Reb Chanina, we know who he was. Reb Chanina bar Choma. Right? We know he was Reb Elazar, and it makes sense because they were in the same. Reb Chanina was older, more senior than Reb Elazar. So Reb Elazar said in the name of Chanina that Rogel, what does it mean? Mishu Rogel ubaki bekriya, a person who's able, he knows how to read the Megillah, right? Then he tzarech lekrosa balayla, aval sheina baki, and it tzarech the ika kriyosa bayon, right? Which isn't this what the Ran says? This is the Ran that I said before, that the Bnei Kfarim, that the Chachamim allowed them to be makdim lo yom haknisa. They didn't read it at night because they weren't rogel. Because the chiyuv to read it at night is a chiyuv the Rabbonim, as the Pnei Yeshua says, and therefore the Chachamim didn't want to. It was a gzeira, for the Amaratzim, was a gzeira shein rov atziba yochol la'amad bo. So memele they only imposed it upon the one who's rogel or is in a situation where he can read the Megillah. But a person is not rogel, is not able, he's not obligated. It's enough if he hears the Megillah in the daytime. Right? You know that the Gemara in Pesachim, so when it talks about whether the Shvus is when the Korban Pesach is Dorcha Shvus, so the Gemara brings the same memra that the Gemara brings by us in Megillah. The Gemara says that Omer Rabbi Yosef Hakol Moedim Bepurim Dibina Nami Lochem. Right, because remember the Machlokes Rebbe Lezer and Rebbe Yeshua, if Chatzil Hashem or Chatzil Lachem or Kula Hashem or Kula Lachem, but Hakol Moedim Bepurim Dibina Nami Lochem. My Tami Yemei Mishta V'Simcha Ksiv. Mar Baravina have Yosef Kula Shate Betanisa, because you may mishte v'simcha ksiv. Okay. So you're not allowed to fast. So it seems that this is Rabbi Yosef. In Psochim, it's the same Rabbi Yosef as in Megillah. And Rabbi Yosef says that Mishta and Simcha is also B'Esped V'Tanis, and Yontiv is also B'Mlocha. And later on, Rabbah, the Bereder Rava, said, nevertheless, the Issa Malocha, they weren't Makabel, right? But the Yontiv, they couldn't, the Yontiv wasn't Tolin Kabbalah. It wasn't, they could be Makabel Malocha or not, but evidently the Anshe Knesset Agdola allowed them. There are other reasons, I said, other reasons in Rishonim why they had the option not to be Makabel Malocha, but the Etzim Yontiv, is vani yomim ha'ele niskarim v'nasim b'chol dor v'dor. So surely, although they had the option not to be makabel the Issa Melacha, but there was no option not to be makabel the Yontiv. So it's Yontiv like Chol HaMoed. So Mamela, there's no Avelis. There's Chazara in Alanisim, although there's no Chazara of Yalav Yov and Chol HaMoed. But here the Tase Shehitilo Neviim v'Chachamim Choiva Yosem Shabbos v'Yomim Toiva. Understand? So Chol HaMoed maybe not, Purim yes, right? But so that's why I said that I have a certain conviction that this whole issue, which is really the Rif and the Rambam on one point that Avelis is knowing, and the Shiltus and the Ram Rottenberg and the Tur and the Rosh and the Moreover Rishonim who hold that it's not the is really the crux of this issue is whether or not when it says that they weren't Makabel Malocha, does it mean they weren't Makabel Yontiv either, right? And the Rambam says that it means somehow that they were free to reject the status of Yontiv, and therefore it's really not more than a weekday where there's a mitzvah of Kriya like Hanukkah. And the other Rishonim say no, they were able to be Makabel. They had an option to be Makabel Melacha, not, but Yontiv it was. Yontiv had nothing to do with their Kabbalah. Okay, very not more than another 3 minutes. Then we're going to daven Ma'ariv. Thank you for your patience.
Maybe it's the difference between the Sfardim, Rambam and Riv, and Ashkenazim, because all of them are Ashkenazim.
Could be. Everything could be. We don't know really, but everything is. It's possible. It's possible. But certainly, I mean, they were those that went in the Shita of the Rif and the Rambam. They observed completely the Avelis, completely of Shiva. I wanted to tell you one thing. Do me a favor. You know what? You see on the second shelf there's a Tilim there. Your Tilim. No, you're right there. It's lying there. The brown and the brown leather. Yeah. Quickly. I don't want to. I promised fast. Okay. David HaMelech says. Thank you. David HaMelech says. Okay. Ki ekach moed ani meishorem eshpot. The David said when it's a moed, when there's a yontiv, ani meishorem eshpot. I judge the Yosha favorably. Many opinions as to what exactly David HaMelech meant. But I always understood it to mean, and I don't think it's wrong, it's ayin ponim laTorah, that we say that ba'arba prokim ha'odam nidam. There are 4 Yemei Din. This is the second Mishnah Rosh Hashanah. Pesach, Shavuos, Sukkos. Okay, but Rosh Hashanah is called Boy Olam Avim Lefonov. And there's a Yom Hadin on Chamish Osa B'Shvat, right? Beis Shammai says, that's Kedivir Beisil, Beis Shammai says that the Rosh Hashanah Lonas is Rosh Chodesh, right? Okay. Ki ekach moed ani meishorem eshpot. First thing, the Rabbeinu Shalom only has a Yom Hadin. He only imposes a Yom Hadin when there's a good mood, when it's a time which is favorable, when it's a time after v'chatonu mikol ha'amim, after sonu v'rotzisa bonu, v'ram amtonu mikol halashonos, v'kidash-tonu b'mitzvasecha. Memele, it's a very, what we call an auspicious time, where we behave favorably, we behave well, and therefore he's able to look at us favorably, and therefore he scheduled the din at that time. And therefore it's not bechinam that Beis Shammai doesn't want to accept that the Rosh Hashanah Leilonis is Tesvav, but rather Rosh Chodesh. Why? Because Kara Alai Moed. Understand? That Beis Shammai didn't want the Yom Adin Leilonis to be on a day which isn't a Moed. Why? Ki Ekach Moed Ani Meshare Meshpat. Right? Okay? So therefore Beis Shammai didn't want to be Makabel Chamisha Asar, and he said, no, the Yom Hadin Leilonis has to be on Rosh Chodesh, which is Kara Alai Moed. Right? Right? Okay. The Mavah Shemesh explains that I alluded to it before, that Vatichtav Esther Malka Mordechai Yudas Kol Toikev, that Mordechai and Esther were poiled by Shamayim that Purim should be a Yom Hadin, and it should be a Yom of Mechila, it should be a Yom Slicha, and the emissaries, the Zichram Lo Yosef Mezaram. And he says here that the Ben Yehuda, the Ben Ishchai, brings from the lashon of the Arizal in the B'shar Kamonas Shepirish v'Zichem Lo Yosef Mezaram Koi al Oiseh Ora Hagdola Asher Lemala. It means the hashpah and the emanation, whatever it is, which we don't understand, but that comes the rachamim that's misorer on Purim milamala, that's ru'usa de la'ela. That's misorer Purim, and that's what it explains. It's called Toikev. Mela, that can only be, it's a Yom Adin, that can only be ki ekach moed ani meshorem eshpat. That can only be na yontav. Ate v'chaton mikalo amin. So Memela, it's an interesting, I'll tell you something, I don't know, not everyone is going to agree, I'm certain, but it says to Reb Pinchas Koretzer, that Reb Pinchas Koretzer said that, he said that why is it that the Even Ezra, there were many things that the Even Ezra didn't understand and that the Ramban did understand, because he said in the Ramban's time, it was the haschola of the Hiskalas of the Zohar HaKodesh. And it's even historically, it's known that although the Zohar HaKodesh was first popularized and disseminated in Spain by Rav Moshe de Leon, who was a contemporary of the Ramban. Actually, he was a little younger than the Ramban, but he says that it's Muska Mikol that the Ramban discovered the Kisvei Yad of the Zohar HaKodesh in Israel when he made Aliyah, and he sent them to the Rav Moshe de Leon to edit and so the Rav Pinchas Koretzer says that there were many things that the Even Ezra wasn't toifus and the Ramban was toifus because he had access to the Zohar HaKodesh. And from that time, he said that became, he called it was like a Netzach Hama. Okay. So Memela, it could be that what the Arizal says, and I hear in this sefer he brings the lotion of the Arizal Bariches. We unfortunately don't have time for it, but it could very, very well be that there was a kuf in the time that many of the Rishonim they weren't misyaches to the sod, to the Sisrei Torah, to the Ki'ekach Moed Ani Mesharem Eshbot, to understand that Kol Toikef means V'zicham Lo Yosef Mezara means the Ha'ora and the Hashpos, and like we say the Yom Kippur, the Shara Shamayim Psach, that pertain on Purim as well. And Memela with the Hisgalus of the Zohar HaKodesh, and the understanding of V'zicham Lo Yosef Mezaram, like the Arizal says, that it means, it refers to the Sharei Shamayim Psach, what the Mavah Shemesh says, that it means that Mordechai and Esther were poiled that Purim should be a Yom Din Berachamim, right? Right here, you like it, right? That should be a Yom Din Berachamim, right? So Memela, it was difficult to understand and to comprehend, but once it was understood, the Ha'oros of Purim, and the ki ekach moed ani mesharem eshbot, then it became muskal rishon that Purim is a yontiv. There can't be any avelas, there can't be any sadness, there can't be even the Mogan Avram. It's interesting. The Mogan Avram says in Tofresh Tzadik Vov, the Mogan Avram who holds that avelas is noig on Purim. He says that Kolshken he's also to see any mini simcha, right? But he says that in the day that holds avelas is noig on Purim. In the day that holds that avelas isn't noig on Purim, it doesn't say any place that he's not allowed to see any simcha. The Mogan Avram said, so Memele, once it became obvious, and once there was dissemination of the Zohar HaKodesh, and it was understood the full implication of Kol Torkev, and V'zichrim Lo Yosef Mezaram meant the hashpos of Kim Ekach Moed Ani Mesharim Eshbot, then it became Poshet. And it became. This is a little bit too much drush, but maybe a little bit of speculation that maybe that when what the Achronim asked the steer in the Beis Yosef, maybe what he wrote in Arachayim. It was without the influence of the Zohar HaKodesh. Maybe what he wrote in the end of Yehuda was with the Zohar. Maybe, but whatever it is, the Levush really reconciles the two. That the Machaber holds that Avelis isn't knowing. But the Iker is ke'ekach mo'em al eshbod. What the Medrash says that the Rebbeinu Shalom that when he is machnis ledin, he always judges favorably, and he those who he loves, he judges b'shas beis rotzen. Those that he doesn't love, he judges b'shas kas. So Mamela, once it was understood, the Tokef of Purim, that Purim is mamish yemei rotzen, and that Purim is a yom adin, right? And that was what Mordechai and Esther were part. Unesana Tokef kedushas hayom. Mamela, it was muchrach that Purim had to be also that there's no avelas because it's a yom. Okay. Chananya ben Akasha, Oime, Moshe Sakal, Chananya ben Akasha, Rotzak Zbach, Lezakas Israel, Leficha Chibelem Torah Mitzvah Shenemar Adon Chofetz, Lemantzit Kayagru Torah V'Yadio.
גאל מקדש מרבה מלמדי ואחיותי לנכות עצמו מוגנם גרם משיחי ויכון יוכון חייל רוב בית ישראל בעגלה וזמן קריב מרועמי ישראל עמו ולך תרמו במה יסביח
It's Bobby for the Sidurim. We have plenty of Sidurim.
ותדע ויתעלה ותדע
וכי
ואלה מכל מחדש ירדה תודה נבטה נמרה אבל מים מרועמי ישראל ואומנם תמדיון והכל תמדיון ועל כל מן דוסקים דורי דגדורי פרינו וכל כתב באתר יהיה לכל שמר הבא חינם חסדי וחמים וחייכם זמר וחייף וקנם כנור שווי עברם
אמן
יש למר הבא בישמע יחדו לכל ישראל
אמן
זה שבא ומר זה שומרים לכל ישראל
שקויים